All right, guys, we're finally doing it. I'm out here recording quite possibly the most requested video that I've ever done here on the channel. For those that don't know, I'm Mike. This is 360 Tactical Solutions, and today I am going to crown the king of all port jobs for the Hellcat Pro. This video has taken quite some time to put together, and that boils down to two reasons. Number one is going to be cost. The average YouTube channel makes quite a bit less money than what most people think that it does. In fact, the only way to really bring in the big bucks is to completely sell your soul and promote and push products that you don't necessarily use or believe in, and that's something that I just refuse to do. At the end of the year, if I break even, I consider that as a good year. Obviously, I could not do this video without comparing the Hellcat Pro Comp. That's the factory ported version. So I had to pick one of these up at full retail. I think I was out the door right about $650 for this guy right here. Next is going to be the cost of ammo. Now, I am an absolute data nerd, and I wanted this video to be as accurate as possible. So I ran the tests that I ran multiple times in order to get a solid average. The result of that is that I ended up spending roughly $850 on the ammo that I used for this. Luckily, my friends over at North Sound Firearms hooked me up with a discount on the ammo, so that helped a little bit there. As far as the data collection goes, I am using my Mantis X10. Of course, I already had this, so we're not going to factor the cost of that into this video, but I'm really glad I already had that. The other thing is that we can't just go by the reduction in recoil, because reducing recoil means nothing if you are basically blowing out all of your velocity. That means I needed to get a good solid chronograph, so I had to order this guy. This is the Garmin X0, however you pronounce it. I'm sure you've seen plenty of videos where people are using these. They are incredibly accurate and precise measuring devices for velocity. Retail on that guy's about $600. All in all, I'm into this video a little over 2 G's, so it wasn't the cheapest video to do. For those of you who are signed up for the Patreon, signed up as channel members on YouTube, those of you using the links down in the description, as well as the promo codes, the people helping with the algorithm by hitting that like button, subscribing, leaving comments down below. I appreciate each and every one of you. Without you guys, there is a 100% probability that this video never would have been able to be made. Now, because I am a total data nerd, there's going to be a lot of information in this video, but I'm going to break it down into 3 basic sections. We are going to do the testing results for the recoil reduction. We are going to do the velocity testing, and then we're going to do the conclusion, where I'll talk about which one of these options is going to be best. I do have 6 different port variations here to go through, so this could end up being a long video. Before we really get into the meat and potatoes of this thing, let me just go ahead and get through the disclaimer portion of this video. And that's going to be my relationships with the various companies that we're going to be talking about here. First off is Springfield. Now, I do have a little bit of a relationship with Springfield. They sent me the Echelon 4.0C, the compact version, at no cost for me to test and review. I do regularly talk to a couple different people in a couple different departments over at Springfield. But obviously I don't have enough of a relationship for me to get this Hellcat Pro Comp at a discount. I had to buy that at my local gun store at full retail cost. Next is going to be Apex. We're going to go over the Apex slide and ported barrel, and I have a great relationship with Apex. You guys know that I use Apex triggers on pretty much all of my firearms. I do test other triggers, but once I'm done testing, I always just take them out and go right back to Apex, because after 20 years of excellence in making triggers, I fully trust the product that Apex makes. Reliability, performance, and safety is what they are known for. So I always go back to the Apex triggers, and Over the last few years of doing business with them, I've gotten to know a lot of the employees there really well. So I do have a strong relationship with Apex. Last but certainly not least, I do have 3 different port variations from Floyd's Custom Shop. Now, in the early days when my channel was at, I don't know, 500 or 700 subscribers, Floyd's was the first company to take a chance and actually work with me and send me some products to test and review. Over the last few years, I have had multiple slides cut by Floyd's, whether it be, just new serrations or actual porting. A lot of my guns have magwells and mag bases from Floyd's Custom Shop on them. Floyd's is a great family-owned company that makes really good quality products, and that's exactly the type of company that I like to do business with. Not just that, but when I have like a crazy custom idea that I want to do, I can always call Floyd's up and they will do their absolute best to help me make that idea a reality. Like the barrel that I have here currently, this is a variation of the ported barrel that's made by Apex. I called up Floyd's and I said, you know what? I think we can make this port just a little bit better. Let me send you my one blank barrel that I have, cut it to my specifications, and they went ahead and knocked that out relatively quickly. So I do have relationships with everybody involved in this video, but nobody's asked me to kind of boost them in the rankings of this comparison. I am well known in the community for telling it like it is. So today is all about the data that I've collected and where each of these port jobs stands in that ranking. Let's go ahead and move on to how I did the testing here. So in order to get the most accurate numbers possible for this test, I used one grip. So, I have several of them here. This one has the Talon Pro grips, but no magwell. This one has just a magwell. This guy here, this is my daily carry. This is the one I'm most comfortable with. I have the Floyd's Custom Shop magwell on there. I also have the Go Gun USA gas pedal, as well as the Hogue Beavertail grip. This is the gun that I shoot the most. So what I did was I just used this lower, and then I cycled out all of the slides and barrel combinations with this lower, just to make sure that any variation possible in muzzle rise could be removed from the data. During the testing process, what I did was load up 5 magazines with 10 rounds each. I took one 10-round mag, popped in the gun, did 10 rounds of just a warm-up to get a feel for whatever port that I'm working with, and then moved on to using the Mantis X10 to do 4 sets of 10 shots, recording the muzzle rise. I went ahead and did this process 4 separate times under various conditions. I came out here early morning, I was out here midday, afternoon, evening. There was a sunny day, there was a day where it was snowing, there was some cloudy but sprinkling, there was actual pissing down rain. As far as temperature goes, I did these tests everywhere from 20 degrees up to right around 50 degrees. So I've got a wide variation of conditions that I ran these tests. Then I took the numbers from all of the tests and I went ahead and got an average from all 4 tests. I've seen a lot of people do comparisons where, they take 2 guns out and they'll put a couple of boxes of ammo through each of them, and then they'll say, okay, well, this one feels better than this one. This one's the winner or whatever. I'm not really a big fan of that. I am more data driven, so I wanted to get the most accurate information possible. Let's start with the Apex variant. So this is the Apex slide and ported barrel. I really like these slides. You've got a lot of options for slide serrations. It's a direct mount for the Hollow Sun K series, which is my preferred optic for a gun this size. It's got a lot of good stuff going for it. The port themselves, it's got one on each side located at 10 and 2 o'clock. There's essentially a recessed oval area that has 2 smaller holes cut on each side. That creates kind of a V-shaped off-gas pattern, which should do pretty well as far as recoil reduction. If you want a good visual of my final testing numbers, as well as more information on anything else in this video, make sure that you hit that link down below to my website. I'll have all that stuff posted up for you over there. The Mantis X records all kinds of recoil information when you're in the recoil mode. We're going to go by muzzle rise, and that's going to be how many degrees that muzzle rises from the time that you pull the trigger till it stops. Over the course of my 4 different sets of testing, the apex, slide, and ported barrel ran 16.7 degrees worth of muzzle rise. Now, having those 2 small holes drilled into those oval resets, I felt like this barrel was going to keep the most amount of velocity, but I didn't feel like it was going to do a ton of recoil reduction. 16.7 degrees isn't bad, but I also feel like it's not great, and that's why I had Floyds Custom Shop custom cut a second barrel for me. The custom barrel that I had Floyds do for me essentially just took those 2 oval recesses, and instead of doing 2 small holes in there, I had them cut out that entire oval. So this barrel actually came in at an average, over all of the testing that I did, an average of 14.92 degrees of muzzle rise. Next on my list is the Commander cut from Floyds Custom Shop. So the Commander cut has a dual port in the top as well as side ports. There is a little bit of discussion out there as to whether or not side ports really do anything, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But this was the first port job that I had Floyds Custom Shop do on my Hellcat Pro. This one came in actually at 15.68 degrees of muzzle rise. Now, for all this testing, I went with 115 grain RBS ammo. I went with 115 because the majority of shooting that people are doing is cheaper range ammo. Most of that ammo is going to be 115 grain. So I figured that was going to give us a good perspective on the average shooting that people are doing. At 15.68 degrees of muzzle rise, the Commander porting definitely did better than what the Apex did, but it did not do as well as my custom port job. This right here is the Floyds Custom Shop Enforcer porting. Now, the Enforcer doesn't have a top port, it only has side ports, and there's a bit of a controversy over side ports. The side ports are actually cut in such a way that it's not necessarily directing the gas out at a 90-degree angle. It's directing it out, but more at a backwards angle. The purpose of those side ports is to alleviate some of the rearward motion, the actual kick of the firearm. Now, these side ports do actually reduce the muzzle rise, but primarily when I'm shooting these guns that have the side ports, it is a smoother shooting recoil, I guess you could say. I am still getting a bit of muzzle rise, but I'm not getting so much of a rearward motion with the kick on these guns. Now, obviously we're talking about 9mm, so it's not a ton of kick or whatever. It's not like 357 Magnum or something, but reducing any recoil characteristics is always a good thing, as long as you're not completely losing all of your velocity. This Enforcer porting came in at an average of 15.71 degrees of muzzle rise. So it is not quite as efficient, I guess, as the Commander is, but I'm still getting a fair amount of recoil reduction. Now, I ran this test before between these 2 guns. When I ran that test before, I don't think that I really got enough rounds on the guns to get a good solid average, because during that test, the Enforcer did slightly better than what the Commander did. This time, I've got a lot more rounds through them, and the Commander actually wins by a hair. Now, I talked earlier about my relationship with Floyds Custom Shop. It is good enough that what they did was they sent me this guy here. This is the new Enforcer port. This is something that they're playing around with. I don't know if this is going to go into like full production or not, but it's slightly different than what the old Enforcer porting is. The cutout itself is very similar, but instead of having 3 slots cut on each side, it has 2 slots cut on each side, and they are a different size. This new Enforcer porting was very similar to the old Enforcer porting. New Enforcer came in at 15.7, whereas the old one came in at 15.71. So basically, when you look at it, the average is the same between the two. The real question is going to be which one holds the velocity better. Last on the list is going to be the Hellcat Pro Comp, the gun that I really didn't want to buy because I already had enough Hellcat Pros. This guy came in, surprisingly, at 15.27 degrees of muzzle rise. Personally, I didn't expect that kind of performance out of a stock port. I have some ideas as to why that is, and we'll go over that in the end, in the conclusion portion of this video. Now, I don't have a stock barrel to compare the stock muzzle rise versus all of these others. I took the one barrel that I had and I did send that into Floyd's to get that custom cut done. And I definitely was not going to buy another barrel and add more expense to this video. So this is basically just a comparison between all of these ports, not between these ports and a stock gun. Like I said, recoil reduction isn't everything. I think what's important is reducing recoil without losing too much velocity, because if your round doesn't have enough power when it hits whatever it's hitting downrange, then what's the use of reducing the recoil? For the velocity test, I went with Speer Gold Dot 124 grain, and I went that direction because most of our local law enforcement gets their ammo from our local FFL, North Sound Firearms, and after talking to those guys, they said that most of those guys, what they're getting when they go in is this particular ammo. So I figured this would probably be the best bet in terms of checking the velocity with these ports. Now, Speer says that out of a 4-inch barrel, you should expect to see about 1,150 feet per second out of this stuff. So again, we're using the Garmin chronograph for this test. For this test, what I did was 10 rounds out of each gun. I did that 4 times out here using the Garmin to record the velocity under various conditions. The ported barrel by Apex did pretty well. That one came in at 1,142 feet per second, which is pretty close to what Speer says that this ammo should be getting. I'm really not too surprised because those portholes, it has 2 of them on each side and they aren't very big. So, you know, you're not losing a ton of gas, so your velocity should stay relatively high. The custom barrel that I had Floyd's do for me, that one came in just a little bit lower. That came in at 1,138 feet per second. So that's not too much of a drop in velocity versus that Apex barrel, but it is better when it comes to the recoil reduction. This guy here, the Floyds Custom Shop Commander, obviously it's got a ton of holes in it. That Commander came in at 1,122 feet per second. Obviously that's a drop compared to the other 2. The thing that you have to realize about what Floyd's does is they backbore all of their port jobs. Essentially what backboring is where the port starts, they machine out just a little bit of material from that point forward so that it reduces the friction on the way out the barrel. One of the concerns that people have when it comes to ported guns, aside from the loss of velocity, is shrapnel or junk or whatever being spit out of those ports back at you. Essentially, when you pull the trigger and it goes off, the projectile leaves the cartridge, it goes ahead and spins on its way down the barrel, and when it hits that port, the port kind of acts as a little bit of a cheese grater. Now the projectile itself expands just a little bit as it goes, and so a lot of times what you see is that when it hits the port, little tiny fine bits of metal will kind of get shaved off of it and come out of the port. That little bit of friction that happens at that point will also lower your velocity. Now with that back bore, when it hits that port area, it's gapped out just enough so that the bullet travels freely through the end without really getting any of that cheese grater action, and you don't get that excess friction, which tends to lower the velocity. Now, clearly the reason that the velocity is lower with this port is because there are so many holes on it. The Enforcer that's listed on the Floyds Custom Shop website right now, this one comes in at 1,127 feet per second. So the velocity is just a little bit better with this port than it is with the Commander. And this guy here, the new Enforcer that I'm testing out, the new Enforcer came in at 1129. So 1127, 1129. So this one had just slightly better velocity than what the old one did. That backbore process really does help when it comes to the velocity, as well as, you know, lowering the amount of crap that's getting blown out of your ports. Again, the Hellcat Pro Comp really surprised me. This one came in at 1,135 feet per second. So as far as the velocity goes between all of these, that was the highest velocity out of all that I tested. I think the reason that the velocity is higher on this is because not only is it a hole that is cut into the barrel, but also it is slightly bored out. I don't think that it's as much as what the Floyds Custom Shop is. The big thing about the Hellcat Pro Comp is that it has a groove or channel cut in the bottom side of the barrel, which acts as an expansion chamber, just like a traditional comp would have. Now, I don't want to nerd out too much on the science behind comps, but basically most comps do have an expansion chamber cut into them so that as the bullet passes through, the gases actually expand in there, and as they blow out of the ports, it also pushes the projectile a little harder, which tends to give you just a little bit more velocity than you would get with a standard port job. I am pleasantly surprised out of the performance with this stock Hellcat Pro Comp. Although it didn't have the most recoil reduction, it did lose less velocity than anything else, and I really do attribute that to having that expansion chamber built in. For those of you that already have a Hellcat Pro that's not ported and you're interested in having it ported, I would say that one of the two Enforcer porting options from Floyds is going to be your best bet. Not only do both of them run very similar in terms of reduction in muzzle rise, but they also come real close to the same velocities as what the Hellcat Pro Comp does. Those Enforcer portings are kind of the best of both worlds. You're getting a good drop in muzzle rise, but you're also keeping quite a bit of velocity. And so to me, that's a winner, even though the Hellcat Pro Comp did better on the reduction in muzzle rise. Something to definitely consider here is going to be pricing. If you already have a Hellcat Pro and it's not ported, but you want a ported version, sure, you could probably sell it for, I don't know, a couple $100 less than what you paid, and then turn around and buy the Hellcat Pro Comp and be ready to go. If you send it into Floyds for, I don't know, $300 or so, I'm not sure exactly how much it costs right now, you can just have the gun that you already have ported. Going with the Apex variant is definitely going to be the most expensive. You're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $700 for a slide and barrel. I really like this slide and barrel set, but I realize that a lot of people don't want to spend that kind of money just to get a new slide and ported barrel. Unfortunately, the port that Apex has didn't reduce as much recoil as what I thought that it would, but it did retain a bunch of velocity, which is a big thing. So if you want to take out a little bit of muzzle rise, but also have the highest velocity, this is a great option. The only one that I really lean away from is going to be the Commander porting. The Commander porting does all right with the actual muzzle rise reduction. My problem is that when it comes to velocity, this one scored the lowest in velocity. So velocity really counts. If you lose too much of it, obviously the bullet's not going to have enough stopping power when it gets downrange. Still though, this one came in at 1122 feet per second on a round that Spear says should run 1150. So it's not a huge drop in velocity. It's still going to do quite a bit, but I do believe the other options are better overall than what the Commander is. Now you may be asking yourself, why didn't I test out any of the other ports that are available on the market? Obviously, it would be extremely expensive to buy more guns and ship them out to be ported and bring them in. There's a lot of them out there that have a series of ports starting just past the chamber. There's so many options, it's just ridiculous right now. I don't really like all those ones that's just, 5 or 6 or 7 holes drilled in the top all the way down. Not only are you going to have that massive fireball coming out of the top, which all ported guns are going to have, but you're also going to get quite a bit more debris coming through those ports than you are with any of these options. And on top of that, you're going to get that friction when the projectile hits those ports on the way through, which is also going to drop your level of velocity. From what's available out there on the market, I think that the options that I showed today are going to be the best ones out there. At the end of the day, it's your choice as to what you do with your gun. I know a lot of people are just going to keep them stock anyways, but if you are interested in a ported variant, hopefully some of this information helps you. Today we have 2 kings of ports for the Hellcat Pro, and that's going to be the Hellcat Pro Comp and the Floyds Custom Shop Enforcer port. Next, I think I'm going to talk to Floyds about having that custom port job I did changed just a little bit and see if I can dial it in to make it a little bit better. You can expect a video on that hopefully in the next few months. That's all I got today, guys. Hopefully that helps you out a little bit. I've still got some daylight here and I've got a box of ammo. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of shooting before I head out, go home and enjoy the rest of my weekend. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you guys. I'll see you back here real soon.